It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. If you've heard of Greta Gerwig before, you probably know her as an actor. She starred in the Noah Baumbach movie Frances Ha, which she also co-wrote. Last year, she had parts in Oscar contenders like Jackie and 20th Century Women. Now she's written and directed a movie of her own. It's called Lady Bird, and it's absolutely one of my favorite movies of the year. It's basically a coming-of-age story. The protagonist is named Christine McPherson, but she calls herself, and asks others to call her, Lady Bird. She's played by Saoirse Ronan brilliantly. She lives in Sacramento, and the whole movie is set in 2002. So it's basically a period piece from right after 9/11. The movie doesn't have much grand narrative. It is basically an accretion of perfect details, little emotional moments, things going on in the background, interchanges between characters that feel so vivid and real that you almost forget you're watching a movie. One of the most captivating parts is Lady Bird's relationship with her mom, Marion, who's played by Laurie Metcalf, who's totally amazing. It's intense, it's a little strained sometimes, but you can tell that the two of them really love each other. In this scene from the beginning of the movie, she and Lady Bird are driving, and they're falling into a fight.
I want to go where culture is, like
How in
New
the world
York,
did I raise such a
or at least
snob?
Connecticut or New Hampshire, where writers live in the
Get into
woods.
those schools anyway.
Mom,
You can't even pass your driver's test.
because you wouldn't let me practice
The way
enough.
that you work, or the way that you don't work, you're not even worth state tuition, Christine.
My name is Lady Bird.
Well, actually, it's not, and it's ridiculous.
Call me
because your
Lady
name
Bird
is
like
Christine.
you said you would.
You should just go to City College. You know, with your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail, and then back to City College, and then maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up.
Greta Gerwig, welcome to Bullseye. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, that's every time I listen to that, I just think, God, they're so good. They're just so good. And when they're talking over each other and they're just relentless.
Well, I think also you have to, it takes an actress as gifted as Laurie Metcalf to nail that joke without breaking the actual emotional stakes of the scene.
No, she
the
means
joke
it.
of and then to jail.
and she has this quality of like, she's just so frustrated she's coming up with this absurdist thing on the spot. Because I think sometimes when you're overwhelmed by anger or in the middle of a fight, you find something coming out of your mouth that you have absolutely no idea where it came from and no justification for.
I feel like when I was 17 years old, I had more or less completely emotionally shut down with my parents for like at least a year and a half before. Like around 15 or 16, I was like, well, I'm drawing the line here.
Right.
I no longer will engage with you as a human being. My wife, who I knew when we were that age, she went through an incredibly intense period with her mother, who's a wonderful woman.
Right.
And my wife is also great. You'd like her.
I'm sure. I'm sure I'd like her and her mother.
But they were like, it was really intense. And I hadn't really seen a film before that respected the intensity of that relationship without making anyone evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wonder if that was part of why you wanted to make this movie.
Definitely. Definitely. And actually what you just said was so interesting about how you shut down at that age. And I think, I mean, not to generalize, but I think a lot of teenage boys do tend to shut down. Like the parents ask them how their day was. They're like, fine. And they just go in their rooms. Yeah. And there's something about, I think, particularly teenage girls with their mothers, they do the opposite thing. They like over-engage, or they sort of want to fight their way out through them or something. And that relationship, I don't feel like it's ever really been mined to the extent that it could be, given that it's so interesting and rich and complex. And I wanted the core love story of the movie to be between a mother and a daughter, and that really be the anchor for everything else that was happening. And one thing that Laurie Metcalf and Saoirse Ronan we talked about and worked on was the fact that you're meeting them at the very worst moment for them in their relationship, and that there have been so many other moments before that where there's, a lot of love and a lot of closeness. It's just that last year, that last bit of time when your child is about to go out into the world and you're not sure they're done cooking yet, that it just creates some kind of chemical reaction between mothers and daughters. And in terms of the fighting and the hard parts of it, I felt like the love wouldn't seem real if the conflict didn't seem real. If it all seemed kind of glossed over, it would just feel fake. It wouldn't feel how these things actually are.
When you think about it, and I'm sure you've thought about it a lot, what do you remember most about yourself at that age?
Oh, it's funny. I mean, obviously I get the question all the time, like, were you Lady Bird? And the thing was, I actually wasn't. I never made anyone call me by a different name. I didn't dye my hair bright red. I was much more of like a rule follower, people pleaser. I liked a gold star. I wasn't.
Were you a good student?
I was a good student, and I was really into achievement in a pretty annoying way, looking back on it. But the heart of the story, the conflict and the love, is all very close to my heart, and really speaks to something that I feel is true. I always say it rhymes with the truth, even if it's not literally the truth. And I think, God, when I was a teenager, I think the thing I remember was most the intensity of the emotions. It was like your emotions on some sort of heightening drug. It's almost like the quality of emotions that sometimes you experience in dreams when you wake up and you realize that in your dream you were...
Because the dream almost doesn't have content other than
Exactly.
the emotion. Like it's just... The content is just barely enough scaffolding to hold up this feeling that you're really having vividly.
Yeah. And I remember that emotional intensity.
There's this great scene that's kind of like where Lady Bird, the main character, makes out, and then there's like a Rocky at the top of the stairs moment in the middle of the street.
Yes. She's just so pumped. My conception of that moment was probably, I wanted Lady Bird to be some combination of precocious, but also a late bloomer. Like she's not sexually experienced in the movie, and she does not appear to be experienced with boyfriends. And I think it's very likely that was her first real kiss that was intentional and not part of like a spin the bottle situation.
Right.
But and I just wanted her to utterly feel this triumph about it. And I think something I was interested in doing in the movie was I think often teenage girls are shown waiting for a teenage boy to like them, or looking at themselves and saying, "Why am I so awkward?" And what I loved about the character of Lady Bird is that she feels pretty damn good about herself and her weird dyed hair and her cast, and she doesn't really waste any time feeling bad, and also she does not wait for anyone to like her. She decides who she likes and who she's going to try to make her boyfriend, and it kind of works, interestingly. But I think that...
But she's also, this is probably meaner than it's intended, but she's kind of a jackass, right? She has
yes.
that foolish teenager quality, but in the sense that those relationships that work, they also don't work.
Totally. They don't work. Yeah, exactly. Because that's the truth of it. One thing I kind of wanted to do in the movie is both, have my cake and eat it too, especially with the romance, that we're simultaneously completely inside Lady Bird's romantic idealization of these people and these relationships. And at the same time, the movie knows it's not right, if that makes sense. So that we can go all the way with the fact that she thinks she's in Titanic, but that actually she's not. She's in this other movie. But understanding what the fantasy is, and even if it's just a fantasy, that doesn't mean we don't take it seriously.
Yeah, I think that movies about teenagers, and especially movies about teenage girls, seem like they come often in one of two flavors, one of which is a kind of high drama.
Sure.
You know, father's dying of cancer and the boyfriend's moving away and
Right.
all this, and everything is played with great weight.
Mm.
Or, occasionally, and this can be very effective, but occasionally with kind of like camp and a little bit
Right.
and a little bit of grotesquerie about the kind of grotesquerie of adolescence.
Sure. Or like an archness around it. There's some irony in there.
And it seems like you didn't want either of those things.
No, I don't.
Or if you did, you did a bad job.
Yes, I failed. No, I wanted the film to be funny, but I didn't want it to ever be in quotes in that way. That sometimes I think arch or more flip comedies, they tend to, it's almost like the actors are standing outside of the words they're saying and commenting on it in a way, or the film almost says, these aren't these people and we are not these people, but aren't they funny? Does that make sense? And I always wanted it to be coming from the inside, like that the actors are completely inside their characters and they're saying things with utter sincerity, which are funny because they're said with utter sincerity, not because there's any sort of meta quality to the way that they're doing it. And then that the audience gets to feel like, oh, girl, I know what's going on, and I know what that guy's doing, and I know what your mom's doing, and I feel for all of you.
One of the supporting characters that was incredibly vivid to me was a drama teacher.
Yeah.
He is, I guess, a priest.
Yes.
Who has been brought in to direct the play, which has boys and girls in it, which is a big deal because it's a Catholic school,
right?
Gender separated.
Yeah.
And he's played by Stephen Henderson, and there's this who is just as brilliant of an actor as anyone could ever be. Completely. And also, I think an acting teacher to some extent in his real life. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. He teaches at Juilliard.
Yeah, and he and folks to whom his name is not immediately recognizable. He's among other things been in like every August Wilson Broadway production. Yeah. Since the beginning. He's like the foremost American interpreter of August Wilson. Yeah. And he's a true gift to American theater. And there's this moment where he's teaching the class, and he says, "We're going to do an exercise to access our emotions to see who can cry first," which is exactly the kind of thing that a high school theater teacher would think is a good idea. No, like such a. And then he just starts crying because he's very sad. Yeah, he's it's interesting. It's a moment that, without giving too much away, like that moment always, everybody laughs when that happens. And then later, it's not funny when you think about what it was. But it's an interesting thing. I think that it happens a few times in the movie where the thing that made you laugh the first time, the second time when it comes back around, it's very painful. And it's almost the reverse of whatever comedy is pain plus comedy
time, or pain plus time equals comedy. Yeah. In my movie, it's comedy plus time equals pain. It's like you laughed at it once, but you sure won't be laughing at it the next time it comes. So the movie is set in Sacramento, which is where you're from. Yeah, that's my hometown. My experiences with Sacramento are gold mining. Yes, is it?
I was going to say Junior State of America.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we go to a lot of Junior State of America conferences to do debate competitions. Yeah,
because it's the capital.
Yeah, exactly. No. Yeah, no, you go and you meet your state legislator and they tour you around the assembly and you catch a glimpse of Gray Davis.
Yeah, Gray Davis, sure.
Right. Pete Wilson, maybe.
Totally.
But it strikes me, there's a moment in the movie where someone describes it as the Midwest of California. Yes. Which is sort of Right, but like there's something weird about the way that it both feels like an idyllic small town and a sunbaked nightmare at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, that line, the Midwest of California, I showed the movie in Sacramento last Sunday, and it was incredibly moving, and everyone was there. Like everyone I've known my whole life. My second grade teacher was there. All my friends from growing up, like my parents, their friends. The mayor was there. The newscaster I liked did the Q&A. Like it was a real.
Oh my God! Now all I care about is doing an event with Dennis Richmond from KTVU.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wonderful life type of a moment. And that line got a big laugh, luckily. But I mean, I wrote it sort of out of partly out of the fact of, it is the top of the agricultural valley, and I think that's something that people always forget about California. And it's sort of that combination of the agricultural, slightly not conservative politically, but there's more of a value placed on older school kind of manners and taking care of your community in a very specific way that feels slightly of an older generation to me, that felt very similar when I was in the Midwest. I felt right at home. I was like, oh, I know what this is. This is like Sacramento. And I think that, most people know about it, or when they talk about, people say, oh, I went to Sacramento for my 4th grade trip to go to Sutter's Fort, which was the fort established in Sacramento, and to fake pan for gold, because at the Wells Fargo Bank downtown they have a gold panning station, I guess, but which I did a ton of. But
maybe visit a Miwok village.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
It's funny. I guess you do. I don't know if you did. We did California history in 4th grade.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
And you'd spend all this time on the missions, all the missions. You had to build dioramas of the missions.
A lot of Adobe talk.
Yeah, so much Adobe talk. And there was
I would
always
say Adobe is only second to pemmican in terms of what you were going to be talking about. I'd say the boiled and smashed acorns.
Yeah, totally.
Then Adobe. And all other California topics.
Yeah. It was so many dioramas in elementary school. I really, honestly, it was a very big part of it. Anyway, so we spent, I guess in 4th grade, we spent mostly the entire year preparing historical characters who would have come through Sutter's Fort. Obviously we didn't do this, but our mothers helped us. We made historically accurate costumes. This all took a very long time, and then everybody got in covered wagons, and we went from our elementary school all the way downtown, and then we stayed in Sutter's Fort that night, and we all slept outside. I remember we had to make our own food, and one of it, you had to kill a chicken and then de-gut it.
You had to gut a chicken?
Yeah, I remember.
I just had to sleep on a boat and learn some sailor songs
No,
about Clutha in San Francisco. Sacramento is too real.
Yeah, I put my hand into the cavity of a chicken and pulled out its innards and put it on a thing. And I don't know why I say all of this, except for the fact that Sacramento is so deeply embedded in who I am. And I felt like I lived as an original California settler for an entire year when I was 9. I don't know. Even though I live in New York now, all of that is really part of me.
Right. I think the movie is, it's about our relationship with home in a more complex and rich way than most movies about adolescence and home. I think a lot of people as adolescents have the feeling like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. No, that's true.
And Lady Bird has that feeling. I mean, we heard that scene where she says, I want to go to New York or somewhere where writers live in the woods, which is exactly the right level of sophistication of understanding of the world outside of where you live. But
which she says, at least Connecticut or New Hampshire where writers live in the woods, just places she's never been. She doesn't know if that's true. It's just a thing she's saying.
But there are, it's so obvious that, the depth of her connection to where she's from is so clear.
Yeah.
And I imagine that must reflect the depth of your connection.
Definitely. I mean, the opening of the film, actually, they're listening to the John Steinbeck Grapes of Wrath. And, Steinbeck is one of those, I think of him as California writer, really. That, her and her mother are listening to the book on tape checked out from the public library of the Grapes of Wrath, and they're weeping at the end of it because it's so incredibly moving. And so much of the history of the second wave of immigration to California, what were Dust Bowl farmers, and that they came in incredible poverty to try to make a better life for themselves in California, and how much of that was based in agriculture and the hope of what that was. And I would say, probably that's what the McPherson family came from. Probably that was what, great-grandfather, grandfather came, that's how they came to California, and that they would cry and they would share this moment, and then immediately she would say, I want to leave, I hate it here. After, and just be a complete brat about the whole thing. But that, both are true. I just think as a teenager, you always feel like life is happening somewhere else, and it's not happening to you, and you've just got to go get to where the place that life is. And then you get there and you realize, oh no, there is no place where the life was happening, and it's not. But it's somehow a revelation you have to learn for yourself.
There are some things in this movie that were so specific that I was like almost overwhelmed by them. I think there's a moment where a character, sort of possible love interest of Lady Bird's, she asks him a question. It says, I don't remember what the prompt is, but he just goes, yeah, it's hella tight.
Yeah, right. Hella tight, sure.
When he said something was hella tight, like I didn't even know I was capable of that level of emotional connection with a slang phrase.
Yeah.
But it felt like my head was going to explode from identification with this jerky 16-year-old saying something.
Yeah.
Hella tight.
Hella tight. That's hella tight. No, there's a lot of details that that same character has this other thing where Lady Bird is trying to look cool in front of him, so she's gonna smoke a clove, and he says, don't cloves suck or something, and then he says, well, they have fiberglass, and she's like, oh, and then I was actually working with the man who made the music, the genius John Bryan, and we'd watched the scene over and over a million times, and he's working on the music, and then his sound engineer turned to me and he was like, you know what? I remember hearing that cloves had fiberglass too. What is that? Where did we hear that from? And then from inside, the other room, somebody yelled, I remember the fiberglass rumor. Is there actually fiberglass in clothes? And this was just like kept going. And it was, I don't know, it was stored somewhere in my memory, this detail of like kids telling each other there was fiberglass in cloves and hella tight. And I mean, I don't know. I think that's just how my brain works. I kind of tend to hone in on details and then I bring them out later.
I don't think I had ever seen a movie as a 36-year-old now. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I felt like I understood emotionally the way that baby boomers feel about every movie that's been released in the past 40 years.
Yeah.
Like, I had never had that adult feeling of resonance with my adolescence in a movie so vividly.
Right. Yes. That's interesting. No, it's...
I was like, is this why people like The Big Chill?
Oh,
like,
right.
I don't know, like...
Right, maybe that feels really true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's... Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things about the movie, in a way, is that it does connect with all these different ages very specifically. And, I think teenagers who are teenagers now connect with this vivid emotional experience that's still completely true. People who are in their 20s or 30s connect with it as almost like a looking back quality. And then, people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, it's like they're connecting with it as parents and as, some people even grandparents of watching what it is. But it's interesting because for some reason it does there's lots of points of connections generationally. And I did that deliberately with the hope that it would connect that way. But I'm glad that it seems to.
Well, Greta Gerwig, thank you so much for coming and being on the show. I love the movie so much, and I'm so grateful to have gotten to get to talk to you about it.
Yeah, that was really wonderful.
Greta Gerwig. Her movie Lady Bird is in theaters now. Honestly, I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. It is a beautiful, hilarious movie. Drop what you're doing, go to a theater, sit in front of the box office until they sell you a ticket. You will not regret it. Sacramento should be proud of Greta Gerwig.